Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of CapCast. This is going to be the second part of our Tableau series. Today, we've got Man Hashim on, and he's going to be talking about Tableau and just the elements of Tableau in a little bit of a deeper detail. Man, can you go ahead and tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thank you for having me on. I'm first and foremost a passionate advocate of using data to drive organizational decision making. I'm here at Capgemini. I'm a senior consultant and have been with the organization 1 year.
Awesome. Thank you for coming on, Mon. When you work with Tableau, right, and to the listeners here, just to give you a refresher, Tableau is a data visualization software. When you're working with that data and you're kind of before you get it into the Tableau, you've got obviously prep it or filter it. What are steps that you do before putting it into the visualization software?
Well, Tableau has a great companion product called Tableau Prep that helps you do a lot of the ETL, extraction, translation, and loading aspects. Typically, what I often find that I need to do is pivot, which is turn columns into rows, because a lot of times people keep the data in a manner that's not really useful for a person trying to analyze it. So I do that. There's also a lot of times where to really make sense of the data, you have to combine or to split the different columns. With the Tableau Prep, you can sort of figure out how to do that, and it's usually an iterative effort.
Oh, wow. That does sounds like a good process there and a very useful tool. And makes a lot of sense. And, you talked about having to flip it or pivot it or sometimes the data is not in the best format. And it sounds like that's probably a lot of publicly gathered data, right? It's not customized towards Tableau, it's rows and columns. Do you have an example of maybe like using that data and, what you something you were able to create with it?
Sure, sure. So one recent example I'd like to highlight is I had the opportunity to take a look at data that documented the by gender, the access to internet and access to mobile phones across the globe. But it really highlighted there are differences by gender of access to internet, which is really one of the most enabling thing that you can have, and as well access to mobile phones.
Fascinating, especially that that's all, just publicly accessible and that you were able to just take that and kind of deep dive and get that insight as to the access across the globe. It's interesting. So it seems to me like you're taking this data and you're telling a story with it, right? And that's kind of a bit of the approach with, it seems to me with Tableau, right? Is you've got to take the data and direct it in a way and kind of tell the story that you want the viewers to get. To me, there seems to be a lot of different types of visualization aspects that you can integrate in with Tableau. And so how do you decide, or, is there an example of you creating this story and using different visualization types?
I think in our visualization space, you have to sort of divide your thinking. Some of it is more technical about how do you get this thing to happen, but a lot of it is also storytelling and very subjective. So
Mhm.
usually things like a donut chart is very common one for that, and I tend to do a lot of those because that's usually the highlights that people are looking for from our data set. But there are literally hundreds of them, and it's really important to map out in your mind a story and maybe even pencil it out about this is where you want to head, and it's just a starting point. Once you get in the data, who knows where it'll take you, but it's a great way for you to organize and and really have a clear story in your mind and a clear visualization dashboard when you're done.
Yeah, fascinating. Now that seems kind of, I guess, the business side, right? You've got sales, you've got benchmarks, you've got stuff.
Yeah.
Now, have you worked with data in kind of like the geographical sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Earlier this year, as with everyone, when we were all sent home to work remotely with COVID, one of my clients said, "Hey, let's do a COVID spatial analysis." Tableau is excellent on the spatial front, and it's if you're surely making a spatial analysis. Sometimes people like use a map to show, say, sales by state, but really that's not really there's no real spatial relationship. That's really a bar chart disguised as a map. But this was the actual flow of the pandemic across the country, and really fit itself very well in a map analysis. But again, it's really important to figure out what exactly you're trying to show.
Right, and that was obviously not some sort of bar chart, right, thrown across the map. That
No,
my assumption is that was some sort of maybe like density bubble or heat map, correct?
you're right. You're exactly right. It was a heat map, and that way you can use the gradient color to show people, county by county, what's happening day by day with the spread of the pandemic.
Which just shows how impactful and important this kind of data visualization is in just interpreting stuff at a quick rate. Now Tableau is growing, and I think Kiana messaged us in our first episode, but there was a Tableau conference. Did you attend that conference?
I did. I did. I attended a virtual conference.
Oh, fascinating. Now, from that conference, you don't have to give us the full play by play, but were there a couple things that you thought was interesting or fascinating that you wanted to kind of share with the listeners here?
Yeah, the two most interesting, there was a lot of interesting things I would say were that Tableau is continuing to grow their Ask Data feature. So if you have the Tableau server, you can type into a natural language processor, which is something just like your Alexa a smart speaker,
Mm.
a question like, say, what were the organizational results for last year? And the Tableau algorithm will look at that data set that you're in, will look at do an analysis. It will create the appropriate visualization and publish it online for you to use. So that's I think is a great capability and offloads from the analysts all the I think more straightforward visualizations that are needed. And then second, I think is really good this time for the analysts. There's something called relationships, which is an ability for the analysts when they get into Tableau. Historically, what they needed to do was sort of study the data outside of Tableau, then do a join with the different data sets, and then work it inside Tableau. Now, well, they have these relationships. What can happen is you can bring in all the data and have what they call a logical relationship, which allows you to change your mind while in Tableau, see each of the tables separately, join them, right join or left join, do an analysis one way for one, do analysis another way for another. So a lot more capability, and also allows you to stay within Tableau and get all the insights you need about the data and do all sorts of different visualizations for those.
Oh, wow, thank you so much. Now I've got to bookmark next year's conference to make sure I stay up to date and learn all these things. But that sounds incredibly useful, especially the kind of relationship aspect, so you don't have to keep jumping in and out of the software. Definitely makes it an easier process. But I think we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you so much for coming on today and being our guest. For the listeners, if you want to learn more, we're going to have a link below. Please click it. And thank you again, Mon.
Take care.